Last week, I released my long-anticipated review of the Nikon 14-24 f2.8 ultra-wide zoom lens. But you know what? I have more to say. In this video, I want to bring you the review behind the review and let you know where you can find some sample files to download from the combination of my Nikon D810 and this great lens. I will show you exactly where you can find these files later in the video though. When I make a review, I feel like there are specific aspects that I need to cover, and I try to keep an open mind. I try to give you a general sense of things, knowing that my personal preferences aren't necessarily yours. In other words, the best thing I can do in a review is to cover all sides, so you, the viewer, can decide which of that information pertains to you. However, sometimes I feel a little bit constrained because I don't always get my own opinion, how I feel about the lens for me, out there in the review. So this follow-up video today is all about me. Mine. Me. Mine. Me. There are two specific areas of the lens that I want to address in this video. And the second one, it may really surprise you. For starters, there's an issue for me that is right out in the open with this lens. It's big and heavy. I mentioned that in the first review, and my mention of that did bring out some comments, both for and against this lens. The fact is that when you want the big, durable f2.8 guns, these lenses are going to weigh more. The reason I brought this up in the review is that I want people to be prepared for this fact. And that wider angle doesn't necessarily mean a lot lighter. For me, and maybe not for you, but for me, I like to shoot light and carefree. There's a time and a place for the big guns, but I prefer to feel unencumbered when I'm out in the world, especially when I'm hiking around taking landscape photos. Now, sometimes that requires compromise. Like I said, the big, durable f2.8 lenses are simply going to be a certain size, girth, and weight. My personal ultra-wide solution is my now practically ancient Nikon V1 and the 6.7 to 13 millimeter ultra-wide Nikon 1 lens. My compromise here is the f2.8 aperture and the smaller sensor size used in the 1 series cameras. So technically speaking, I have slower shutter speeds and lower light with this lens, and the CX sensor in the V1 is certainly no FX sensor like my D810. For me, ultra-wide is not a shoot-all-day solution. It's for the occasional alternate view and for situations where I really feel like I can make an impact with it. This can be an interior or out in the world. I'm no genius with ultra-wide, so if I shoot all day with one, my photos tend to get a bit boring and repetitive after a while. So, since it's an occasional thing for me, the compromises that I make with the smaller setup make sense. I'll save the size, weight, and expense of going with the big FX f2.8 solution and instead go for something smaller that I can have on the side of my main setup. Now, I know that a lot of you don't care about the size or the weight, or you say, "Holy Trinity lenses or go home," and that's fine too. I won't discourage anyone from getting this lens. If it's what you want, go for it. On to the second area of what I want to address in this video, which is even more personal than the weight of the lens. And it's the opposite of what you might think I'd say here. Are you ready? This lens is boring. What? Wait, what? Don't get me wrong, ultra-wide is not boring, and you guys blow me away with many of the ultra-wide shots that you've posted. But here's the deal. This lens does everything I'd expect. It produces crisp, clean, very low distortion, ultra-wide angle photos, just like the other lenses with the same quality build and handling that many of us have come to love, like the 24-70 and the 70-200. And the 14-24 did the job for me, shot after shot, each day that I had the lens in my hands. It's bulky, it can be a little unnerving to have the protruding front element, but I really didn't even think about it after a while. So what's the problem, you're asking? Why do I think this lens is boring? Well, first, I mentioned that I'm not a huge fan of ultra-wide in general for my own work. Using this lens, I feel like I capture a whole lot of something in one photo, but I don't capture any one thing in particular. It's too much for my personal style and most of my shots. Plus, I like a challenge, and there's no quirks here. This lens is almost too sterile. It's laboratory perfect, and for me, that can lead to laziness, and it can make the photography process a bit boring for me. And now you may be saying, "Okay, Snap Chick, what are you complaining about?" Or, "Snap Chick, you're just doing it wrong." You may be right, and it's really not a complaint. I may be exaggerating a little bit, but let me say this. I have a lot of gear, and more that comes through my lab on a weekly basis. Recently, I tried out the Sigma 50mm art lens, the Fuji X100T, and the Nikon D70. It's all great stuff. Some, to me, has soul, and others are technically perfect, but they really don't speak to me. I think part of the problem is that I've also been reviewing this 50mm f1.8 Series E manual focus lens. It's quirky as anything, and even extremely annoying at times. And you know what? I've loved every minute of it. Pulling off a good shot with it takes a bit more work, but it brings a bit more satisfaction as well. A challenge, if you will. I feel ultimately involved in the process of taking a photograph. Now, the 14-24 brings a different kind of challenge. The lens is all there for you. Autofocus, tremendous low light capability, and extremely crisp images. The challenge is getting the right subject, the right timing, light, and location. The lens takes care of the rest. Let's face it, these are good problems to have. When my main complaint is that a lens is boring, I think that means that it's doing its job right, so let's call that a fun and not so completely serious complaint. Okay, I promised you some downloadable images. I have one for everyone over at snapcheck.com, and for my VIP members, I have a series of RAW and JPEG files available for download. And again, these are Nikon D810 and 14-24 f2.8 images, all around the Grand Canyon area in sunny Arizona. Everyone can go to my site to find the first download. There's a link to the post in the description of this video, so it's easy to get to. If you are a VIP, log in while you're there and you'll see all of the rest. If you're not a VIP member, but you're interested in finding out more about the VIP options, click here while you're on the site and check it out. All right, that's everything for the review after the review. As always, feel free to leave comments and let me know if you have any questions.